Frantic Nerdcast, hosted by AJ and Brock, talking about all the nerdy things that you want to hear about. Let's get into it.
Hello, people. How are we going on this fine podcast listening day? I am AJ.
And I am Brock.
And we have another special thing to do. As of our last episode, we had a guest. Well, guess what? We have a secondary guest.
Doubling down.
We have the lovely Zachary with us. How you going, mate?
Pretty good yourself.
We're good, thank you. Good. And I guess let's do the normal thing of give us your nerd credentials.
My nerd credentials. So basically, starting from a young age with video gaming, with the Sega Master System was my first console.
We're going all the way back here.
Yeah, right the way back. The game that actually got me into it was Wonder Boy 3.
What's Wonder Boy 3?
Wonder Boy 3. So you start out as the final form until you meet this a variety of dragons, but the Master Dragon effectively curses you and you become different characters throughout your journey towards returning back to being a human knight, collecting different weaponry and things along the way. So,
what was this on?
Master System. It's been re-released on the Nintendo Switch, which I had to go and buy when I found out.
I don't think I've ever actually heard of that game.
Yeah, when you first said it, I'm like, is it like a cheap Astro Boy of some kind? Or but no, it sounds way different and it sounds pretty awesome for a concept.
Pretty fun. So, it's very much like the old Mario games concepts where it's like just a flat world where you're running left and right, jumping up and down through different mazes and different bits and pieces. But yeah, it was lots of fun back then, and always trying to remember the password save codes to get back to certain levels, and always forgetting where the piece of paper was, so I had to start from the start again.
That was one of those old games where you used to give the code, it was a cheat code to get to a certain level because they had no save capabilities. I remember that.
But then, so moving on from that, just passed through different consoles like the 64 with like Zelda and Pokemon Stadium at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then
God, I love Stadium. That was such a good game.
Stadium 2
awesome.
was peak.
I don't think I've actually played Stadium 2. I think Stadium was the only one.
I was too hooked on
Was
Stadium.
Stadium 2 on 64?
Stadium 2 was on 64. It was a dual-coloured cartridge, so it had, I believe it was gold and silver because it was for the gold and silver generation Pokemon.
Because they had a little adaptation thing. You could plug your Game Boy in and use your Game Boy characters.
Yeah, so you could use your own characters. Yeah, and it was much the same as Pokemon Stadium 1 with mini-games along the way where you would use Gen 1 and Gen 2 Pokemon in it. And then basically now into my later years, I nerd away with tabletop wargaming, primarily Warhammer, and then a variety of anime. I am, 1,100 episodes deep into One Piece. Just watched the current episode.
1,100, so you've reached the end of season 1.
Yes. So deep into shows like One Piece, I've watched Naruto and Shippuden the whole way through. Currently also making my way through Bleach.
Oh, so, Jesus, yeah.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for punishment.
Hardcore. Well, thank you very much for joining us, and we highly appreciate it, and the crowd appreciates it. Thank you, crowd.
Thank you.
Shut up. All right. So before we start with anything else, we didn't have any of this planned, but as of recording this yesterday, was Super Bowl Monday in Australia or Sunday in America.
Yep.
The Deadpool trailer came out.
It was amazing. I didn't sort of do any... I watched it. I didn't take any notes or go into depth of it because I was just trying to digest what I just watched. I can't fucking wait.
I was at work and I reckon I looked like the meme of Randy Marsh when he got the computer and it's all just covered in cum. It's everywhere. That was me.
Yeah, incredible. The fourth wall broken immediately within the trailer and everything. I mean... just straight into, hey, this is Deadpool.
One of the things someone noticed is the trailer came out in February, and the trailer starts with a happy birthday and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And Deadpool, he appeared in, I think it's New Mutants number 98 or something like that, in February.
Oh, right.
So February is actually his birthday, and the trailer dropped in February.
Oh, nice.
So everyone's like, "Oh my god!"
So a very, very nice connection through it. But look, it's awesome.
And I think apparently some of the other spoilers that I've seen, like Easter eggs I've seen, are when he's on the ground at the end when Wolverine shadow comes over him. There's a comic on the ground next to him. It's Secret Wars comic.
Yeah.
And everyone knew it from the set photos, but in the background, in that scene, the big thing that's behind him, buried in the ground, that's the 20th Century Fox logo. And then everyone reckons that the Wolverine sitting playing poker is Daniel Radcliffe.
Oh, really?
That's the big fan theory.
That'd be pretty awesome.
That Daniel Radcliffe. He's the one with the patch.
Yeah.
You've probably seen pictures of him in the white suit with a patch over his eye. Yeah.
So because they've announced like it's Deadpool and Wolverine is the movie now, do you think they're going to have another trailer which would be full flip side, like more focusing on Wolverine? That was my thoughts.
I don't know. We were talking about this before we started recording. I don't want another trailer.
I don't want another one either. I have no doubt they'll do
another
more.
4. Yeah.
But yeah, I thought if they're going to do any more, that's all that I'd want to see additionally. But my preference would be, as you guys said as well, I don't want to see another one. I'd rather them leave it there and then just the movie come out.
Yep.
That'd be so much better.
Oh,
and
one of the other Easter eggs, apparently someone spotted, is when you're in the TVA and the elevator door opens and there's a whole heap of people doing work and stuff like that. One of the people in the background looks like Timely.
Oh, yeah.
Which I don't know if that was a pre-court case, after court case decision. So whether they'll go back and sort of remove that. Who knows?
Okay. I didn't pick up on it, so I'm going to have to go back and have a gander
it's
on
like
that as
he's
well.
right in the background, and it's just the hairdo looks like Timely's hairdo, just talking to like another scientist sort of thing. But then the questions are like, what TVA is it?
Yeah. Oh, well, that's a given with how it sort of came through with the guy leading it and whatnot. So, I mean, I don't think it'll be a what TVA, but a where, when TVA.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. But other than that, it looks fucking sick. Just, yeah, it looks amazing.
I do have a question, though, because I'm not that well versed with the Marvel history. So
Like MCU or comics?
Comics.
Yep.
And more so, yeah. So is the Wolverine that will be in Deadpool Wolverine, I know it's Hugh Jackman, but is it going to be the same Wolverine picking up from the X-Men movies, or is it going to be only judging off the costume is remarkably different?
Is everyone thinks that the Wolverine with the yellow costume is going to be the 1998 cartoon Wolverine.
Right.
Is what everyone's believing.
Yeah, so one other theory I've seen behind that is that it could be the Wolverine that was seen in Days of Future Past, where they got trapped in, like you see that heap, like the comic piece with Wolverine. He's got the big like screen headpiece over his head, and he's wearing nothing but a mechanical loincloth. So they've said that it could be a progression of that Wolverine.
Oh, the
as
Weapon
well.
X.
Weapon X, yeah.
Yeah, Weapon X Wolverine. That's the one where he's got the metal thing over his head. Yep. That's from like when he first goes through the program.
Yes.
Which in the comics, Deadpool and Wolverine are in the same program. So Deadpool's actually a weapon. I think he's like weapon 19 or something like that from memory in the car. I don't know. One of the numbers. He's one of the things like X-24. She's weapon X-20, number 24 is in the comics.
Yep.
So the other rumors are she's going to be in it.
Yeah, I've seen them a while back, which would be awesome.
Elektra's meant to be in it. Jennifer Garner's Elektra from the Daredevil movies.
Okay, so we're expecting it to be fairly cameo heavy.
But I reckon it's going to be very in your face, laugh out loud cameo.
Yeah, sure.
And surely he's going to be like fucking Ben Affleck's going to be Daredevil, and he's going to be like, Netflix Daredevil's so much better or something like that. I reckon.
Okay.
Or some reference to his Batman appearance.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Because they did in number 2, didn't he do a DC reference?
Oh, I can't remember. It's been a while since I watched it.
With oh no, it was Marvel.
He did
He
did the Lantern reference. Oh, he did too as well.
Yeah.
Called him a purple thumb or something like that.
Yeah. And then in the first one, they had the reference between McAvoy or Stewart. We've preferred Professor X. We're going to take you over McAvoy or Stewart. The timelines are so confusing.
Yeah.
But so that is the Daredevil trailer, which we're all very excited about. If you haven't watched it yet, go watch it. It doesn't give anything away in the movie.
No.
It's a perfect teaser trailer.
Oh,
Just
100%.
gets you fucking super excited.
Exactly.
Very, very good. And the other thing I wanted to briefly chat about was Halo dropped.
Yes.
Episode 1 and 2. Have you watched Halo yet, Zach?
No, I've played Halo very rarely. I've all been a PlayStation console gamer throughout the time, so I've only really played Halo at mate's house growing up, so haven't watched the TV series and don't really know much about the background.
don't need to know much about the background to watch the show because it's separated enough to be its own thing. Like, I think being involved with the games younger and whatnot, for me, it just gives a nostalgic pull to it. But separating that, it's still just a great show to go and watch anyways. Just that sci-fi space.
I personally believe if you're not a player of the games, it's perfect for you.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't follow the games.
Correct.
I think,
and that's what a lot of the game fans are pissy about because you know what nerds are fucking like. They, oh my God, he took his helmet off. Oh, Jesus Christ. Because in the games, Master Chief never takes his helmet off.
Yeah, no, that was one of the biggest flaws and criticisms that some of my mates that had watched it said about it. Like, don't watch it. It's not that great. But they were hardcore Halo gamers. It's
a joke. Like, it is. The first season is fantastic. I really, really enjoyed the first season. I had no I had one major gripe with it.
We're back to this, are we?
Yes, we've talked about this in previous episodes. There is a side character, this young chick. He finds her in the first episode, and her story and his story are not at all fucking intertwined. And she is so fucking pointless in the show, and she's just annoying as hell. And they should have just wiped that whole story from the show and just focused on the whole Master Chief, UNSC, all that kind of stuff. Thankfully, they haven't really focused on it in season 2. There's only 2 episodes out so far. She appeared at the end of episode 1 for like 2 seconds. And I'm watching episode 1. I'm like, yes, she's not fucking in it. This is so good. Yes. And then all of a sudden I hear a voice. I'm like, fuck.
I was honestly waiting for you to send me a message.
But I mean,
without saying too much further about the 2 episodes, definitely go back and watch season 1. It's a great watch.
Yeah.
And then to be able to sort of pick up where season 1 finished off and go straight into season 2, it's awesome.
Just from the trailer for season 2, some of the stuff they've shown in the trailer, it just looks like it's going to get fucking intense as hell.
Definitely.
Because this is kind of the first season was kind of like just giving you Master Chief's background, really, and kind of making him a bit more human so you can... Because one of the things people don't understand that are gamers and comic book fans and all that kind of stuff is mediums are different. Like, video game medium is vastly different from film medium. So, like, video game, essentially... Yeah, there's the cutscenes, and they're like the exposition dump. There's like this is a bit of the story, and then you're playing the story after that. Like you're doing the story. Whereas in a movie, you can't do that in a movie.
Yeah,
and in movies, if you do dumps like that, it's just so in your face and just ruins everything for people that watch it. And then also you've got to consider when you're making a series like that. It's a business. They need to make money. So they need to appeal to a wide audience. Because the gamer community is like 2% of the people they want to watch this. So they need to appeal to everyone. So they need to actually put some story in there and some emotional beats so that you connect with those characters.
Yeah, they need to put in some side characters as well and side stories to build upon through the thing and whatnot as well, don't they?
They need to put in good ones that have relevance.
I think she'll be a bit more relevant in this season, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I don't mind. She was annoying, but I think she was annoying to me because she did fucking nothing. All she did was whinge the whole time. So hopefully it gets better.
Yeah,
but it's good. Watch it. I recommend it, Zach. Go for it.
The only experience I have of watching a movie or adaptation from a video game was Warcraft. And
I liked Warcraft.
I liked it. I will be that little gamer nerd now, and I just couldn't stand it. When there's such a rich storyline there to follow, make tweaks, make changes like you said where you need to, but completely changing characters.
See, a fun fact about that. Well, number one, it's directed by David Bowie's son. That's just a fun fact for you. Number two, that movie wasn't targeted at us. It was targeted at the Chinese market.
Yes, I knew that.
Because that is the majority of the Warcraft players. Yep. So they deliberately wrote that movie to appease the Chinese audience.
There you go.
Did you know that the Chinese servers actually have tweaks to the game? Such as when normally in the game when you die, you turn into a skeleton on the ground. in China you'll turn into other things like a loaf of bread.
I'm guessing that's because of their internet
because of
rules.
the internet ruling and things like that. But there's change like that throughout the game. So yeah, that's the Chinese market.
Yeah. I briefly played when World of Warcraft came out. I briefly played it. I think I got to like a level of fucking 11 or something like that. It's like over 100 now, isn't it?
No, there's been level squashes and things, but I don't play it now because basically I've got at the point in my life where I want to play it well. Like I still have the urge to play it, but I want to play it well and play it properly, but I don't have the time to do that. And so therefore, like, it's just too big of a time sink to play anymore.
That's kind of why I stopped playing it. It was just way too time fucking
Yeah, no, there was a time when I was like at my peak of playing it. Like I was raiding 4 or 5 nights a week from like 7 o'clock to 11 o'clock, and like would not go out during the day because I had to like grind gold and like materials to raid that night. So, you know, I was real nerd heavy then.
See, I was always a fan of the RTS Warcraft, like 1, 2, and 3. Like that's my Warcraft. World of Warcraft is a Warcraft to me. That's just, it is not Warcraft. World of Warcraft is controlling little peons to go chop some wood for you. You build your barracks, then you go fuck up some humans.
Job's done.
That's it. Job's done. Did you ever play the old RTSs?
I don't know which one I played, but I know I sunk my teeth into one of the Warcrafts.
Did you have like a leader that you controlled as well?
Nah, I'm pretty sure it was when it actually went.
I would say it would probably have been 2. 2 was probably the most well-known and most well-played. 3 is when they started to really expand on it and
that's when they added like cutscenes and
Sure.
all that kind of shit to it.
Yeah. Either way, sunk some time into it over the course of about a month and then just didn't go back to it, to be honest.
That's fair enough. We used to play it at school.
Yeah,
we used to have like you set up a network in our computer lab, and we like lunchtimes you just go in there and you set up networks and play that. And then we had this little fucking 2D tank game where like you're literally like a little square with a turret, and you just network all 20 computers, and everyone's just 20 computers running around. It was great fun. Kids are so spoiled these days.
Yep,
they don't know how good they've got it. We had to play fucking 8-bit games.
To be fair, 8-bit games were awesome.
They were. And before we get on to the main subject of today's podcast, there was one other little treat, or there's 2 treats. One I don't really fucking want to talk about. The other one, let's talk about it briefly, and then in another episode we'll talk about it more, because I'm sure you've watched this one, because we've talked about this in a previous episode, and that is Kingdom of Planet of the Apes. The trailer dropped.
I've been holding off on watching the new trailer.
You haven't? Okay,
I haven't watched it yet. I've been holding off because I wanted to. I watched the Deadpool one, then got distracted by some other things, and then seen that was there. I'm like, I want to sit down and watch that one.
We'll talk about that next episode. So if you want to hear about us talking about our thoughts on that, come watch the next episode. All I'll say is it looks like it's going to be fucking good. And the other thing that dropped, which we don't need to talk about it more than me mentioning it, was the fucking trailer for the Twister remake.
I'm sorry, but you mean Twisters?
I thought it was a remake at first until I saw the sneaky S.
Why do we need another Twister movie?
I don't know.
Why?
Something to do. Why not?
Why?
Why not?
The first one wasn't that great. But yeah,
when was that one? Like late 90s or whatever? Early 2000s?
I can't even remember who was in it. Was it?
I want to say Helen.
Pierce Brosnan?
I want to say Helen Hunt. I think I'm wrong.
Because, I think you might be right. Helen Hunt, yeah.
I want to say Helen Hunt, and I can see old mate's face.
Bill Paxton. Bill Paxton was in it, I'm pretty sure.
I want to say that's right.
I'm pretty sure Bill Paxton was in it. Because I think you're thinking Pierce Brosnan because Dante's Peak came out at the same time. We had a run of and Volcano with Tommy Lee Jones. They all we had like a run of disaster movies that came out over a certain amount of time there. So I'm pretty sure Bill Paxton. We got Zachary looking it up for us. I'm pretty sure Bill Paxton. Am I right?
Hold on, it's only showing me Twister's information.
It's the forefront of information. I mean, it's the biggest release.
Bill Paxton, Helen Hunt, and Philip Seymour Hoffman was in it.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, he was the nerd.
He was the nerd in the back making the little Pepsi droids.
That's right. They're in the trailer, the little drone things. Those little they make, the ping pong balls with the Pepsi cans on them.
Oh, really?
They're in the trailer, so it's got some form of continuity.
Look, I seen it was there. I'm like, I'm not even going to bother watching the trailer. If when the movie comes out, I will probably watch it, but for now, I'm not too fussed.
That sounds about fair in my opinion.
Well, okay, so while we're just briefly touching on trailers and whatnot.
Oh, here we go.
Well, you've seen that Knuckles came out as well, the TV series.
I completely forgot about that. Oh my god!
Hang on, Sonic and Knuckles.
Yeah.
So like the movie,
So they're
the movie
doing
Sonic and
Knuckles?
Sonic 2. Knuckles is getting his own solo series, which I had no idea this was happening at all.
No, so I picked up on it a couple of months ago, but then they've dropped a trailer for it as well. It seems based around Knuckles, but it'll be heavily with Sonic and Tails in it, anyways. But anyways, that's another one to talk about in the future.
I look forward to this.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks fucking amazing. Cannot wait. Well, let's get on to our main subject for this episode. Gaming, that's right. So, since we have Zachary with us, he is a massive tabletop wargaming nerd, and me and Brock like to think we are also semi-tabletop gaming nerds. We haven't really touched much on tabletop wargaming.
No, not too much, just
previous
briefly.
episodes. We've sort of semi-talked about it. So we thought we'd jump on it in this one. First thing I want to talk about is to hammer or not to hammer. That is the question.
I don't know. It depends on how big your wallet is.
That's it. So for those of you who don't understand what we're talking about, or you are new to wargaming, to hammer, I'm referring to, of course, Warhammer by Games Workshop. Warhammer is Warhammer 40k, all games released by Games Workshop, is the Mac Daddy of the monopoly of the wargaming world. They've been around since I think the Warhammer came out. I'm doing an article for the website on this, so I've researched a little bit on it. But I believe the first game came out in 1983 or something like that, the original Warhammer.
I believe so, but then you'll also find there is lore and story that was released before that.
Because they were a RPG company before they started.
Okay.
It was started by Steve Jackson, but not the Steve Jackson that made Munchkin and Steve Jackson Games. It's another Steve Jackson and another guy, and they used to do choose your own adventure books and stuff like that. If you follow Gorilla Miniatures on YouTube, he's played a couple of them. It's like a Witch Mountain or something like that. It was one of them. Then they got into the miniature market with Citadel Miniatures, and then they released Warhammer Fantasy Battles, which was their first game. And then about 5 or 6 years later, I want to say, they released Warhammer 40k.
I want to say it's longer than that, only because of the additions that were released between Fantasy and 40k. I want to say it's longer than that, but off the top of my head, I don't know.
It's highly possible.
There is a YouTube series which the name escapes at the moment.
I have it. So Warhammer Fantasies was 1983 and Warhammer 40k was 1987. So only 4 years there.
Right.
So essentially, they've been around since 83. They're kind of like, for those TCG players out there, they're the Magic the Gathering of wargaming. And they're still going strong today. They are still the big daddies of it.
Well, they've released their 10th edition within the last several months, which is obviously doing the rounds again. I think they got released in Q3 last year or thereabouts. I mean, me personally, I've only played Edition 9. And I've only played a couple of games.
So this is the question. Like, what we've got you here, Zach. Like, you're a big Games Workshop player.
Yep.
Yeah. Would you say Games Workshop is worth it, or should people try other games?
The rule set is, on a whole, really worth it. Obviously, it can get skewed quite quickly when you start playing competitive play, because there are those power games out there that will min-max units, take the cheesiest builds and the tricks they possibly can, which can make it unfun when books are released where the new army is obviously at a higher power curve than the existing armies. But overall, it's always been a fun game. I've been playing it since I was about 10, 20 odd years later, still playing it. I've had gaps here and there, but it's always good fun to push models around, roll dice, and have a bit of fun with your mates. Often with a beverage close by.
I think I started playing it. Fuck me. I played 40k. I was never into fantasy, but I played 40k. I want to say 5th edition, maybe, or 4th. No, actually, I remember I got at a market stall. I found a copy of the starter set for 2nd edition, which with like all the minis in it and stuff, the rule sets, and I was too young to actually understand what the game was. I was just fascinated by the miniatures. I was fascinated by the miniatures and all that kind of stuff. I didn't understand the game. And then when I actually got into it, I started playing, I think it was 5th edition, way back in the day.
Yeah, I think I started getting into 40k at the end of 3rd, start of 4th. Walked into a Games Workshop and didn't really know what it was, and saw some models and
he never left.
Yeah, basically spent many a school holiday in there from open till close. But yeah, so 2nd edition, I believe, would have had cards that came, like magic cards that came with it. Yeah. That 2nd edition had a recent revival at my local gaming club a few years back, and everyone was busting out all the old school models, the very static pose miniatures they were back then. But yeah, as they've gone on, every edition obviously has its positives and negatives. Currently, I haven't played 40k since about maybe 6th edition. I basically dropped it and went primarily to their fantasy range. But I know a lot of gamers that I play with have started to dabble back into 40k, so I think the current edition is a lot better. Because 40k at one point, as Brock alluded to earlier, was the biggest wallet usually won because you could afford to buy the newest, biggest gun. And walking past tables where the models are bigger than, they're half the size of me, and I'm, tall, lanky lad. It just never looked that appealing to me because it was just like 5 giant models on the board, and that was it. It took away from the aesthetic of, having an army in front of you.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, have they shifted the rules to more so push for building an army again? Or is it still one of those things where you can walk in with, as you said, 5 big-ass models? Because I know there are like several rule sets that I've gone through on other games where it actually says you can only take one of X, and because of this, you then have to fill it with so many infantry units and whatnot to build it up so that you're forced to have an army rather than, as you said, 5 tanks.
Yeah, they've always had that to a degree with in 40k it's called the force organisation chart. So you've got to have your HQ, you've got to have your 2 troopers, and then you can go from there. But I think over time, obviously, because the lore is so rich with all these great looking tanks and titans and things like that people wanted to inevitably get them into the game. So they have, and there's different rule sets that's made, obviously things aren't quite as powerful as the lore would state them to be. But yeah, they have tried to change that. And I know in Age of Sigmar, usually it's mission based. So if you want to be a competitive gamer, normally now in Age of Sigmar, I have 3 giant greater demons on the board, but I'm probably not going to win that much because I don't have objective control and map control where I need to.
Sure.
So I can be outmaneuvered by the opposition. So can't really expand on that for current 40k because I haven't played it and looked into it that much. But yeah, I think they're moving down that road as well with missions and having a stricter force chart. So you have to sort of take more of your chaff units to unlock your bigger stuff.
Sure. So I suppose, again, the naivety around 40k and whatnot, but watching a fair few of Guerrilla Miniatures videos when they released the new 10th edition, he sort of did several videos around that. I agree with what you're saying around like those missions and whatnot, and having missions very prevalent through it. It seemed like it was very mission heavy or objective and goal heavy as to what they were trying to achieve, which I suppose that sort of touches on what you were saying.
I would say, and that is an aspect of most tabletop wargames have mission heavy focus to it now, but that's one of the things, with 40k at the time, that was quite interesting for me back in the day. And then moving to fantasy became there were missions there, but it was more tactical based and things like that there. So the tactics of like maneuvering your units and things became a lot more important. But now in Age of Sigmar, it's kind of a hybrid of both aspects there. It is more of a skirmish game, but you've got missions there and you've got lots of tactics there to try to outplay your opponents.
Sure.
Now we have to talk about the one massive elephant in the room for any Games Workshop game, and that is
price. Is it price? Yes, it's price. I got it right.
Massive price. My God. Now, any game has gone up with inflation. Like everything's gone up with inflation after COVID, all that kind of stuff. Everything raised prices.
Yeah, but they went up before.
But yeah, these guys,
they're still going up.
I remember when Warcry came out. I bought the starter set for Warcry. It was $180, I think. You got massive pieces of terrain. You got the 2 forces, cards, dice, all that kind of stuff.
Did you open it?
I did.
Silly boy.
We played it multiple times. But when they announced the new Warcry, like the new big box Warcry, I was like, you know what? Me and Brock like playing Warcry. I might give that a purchase. And as Game Workshop do, they announce things and you don't find out the price until a week before they release it. It was $330 fucking dollars.
So I got it, but I searched a lot and I got it for just over 200. So I managed to pick it up for just over 200, which I was fine with. But even so, like, you do a comparison between the first starter box and the second one. They brought
the
out,
train was
and
nothing
even
the same.
Yeah, like it's not as much as what you got through the first one, and it just wasn't comparable.
So I have a follow-up question to that. So the second biggest problem with Games Workshop with new releases, when did you get it? Because often Australia, first of all, we get a price rise straight away just because we're Australia, apparently.
Australian tax.
And then secondly, we get left out of orders and things a lot. So like people will pre-order it, but it's already out of stock before the pre-orders have come. But the book debacle, the like starter sets, like everything, like the Titanicus starter sets, I think it was Titanicus. Basically
they took ages.
Like people had pre-ordered and it was like six to 8 months later after the actual release date when they got it.
So the release happened. I didn't pre-order anything. I waited until they released to actually see what you were going to get, or at least how much it was going to cost. And then I started looking around. I think I would have got it maybe 6 months after release. But in saying that, I didn't get it direct from Games Workshop. I got it from another supplier.
Which is the only way to get Games Workshop products.
Exactly. And I mean, I got it so far down the track that I was able to find a reasonable price.
So, yeah, the way around this is obviously we live in a futuristic world with 3D printers. GW will stamp down on that, though, mainly only in competitive play. If you're playing in your garage, it's not an issue. Like, as long as you and your mate are happy with what model you're using to say this is a Space Marine, this is a...
Which is how me and Brock play.
Yeah, this is a Tyranid warrior sort of thing. But in competitive tournaments, they, especially if they're sponsored by GW, part of their sponsorship requirements is that every model being used is an official GW model.
I'm not surprised.
Which, in fairness to them, that is 100% acceptable. They are a business. They need to make money.
100%.
It's people that complain about that. There's nothing to complain about. They are, first and foremost, they are a business. They're there to make money. They're not there to appease nerds.
No, and that's it. And realistically, it's only that rule is only affecting the small percent of like hardcore tournament players, not the not the average player that plays the game.
It's their IP. They have the right to protect their IP. I mean, exactly. They do when they try to license the names for Space Marine and Eldar and all that kind of stuff. It got a bit out of hand, and people went, "Fuck you."
So that was probably a big turning point of the time when Warhammer was on a steady decline at the point. They nearly went bankrupt. Yeah, they made a lot of poor decisions. One of them was the End Times, which is how they ended their square-based fantasy game, Warhammer Fantasy. Do you know much about that?
Yep.
I don't know.
Okay, so I know enough to sort of explain the gist of it. Basically, it was a combination of two reasons why they killed off Warhammer Fantasy with the End Times. So basically, all the fantasy gods came down, rescued certain people, and the world as we knew it was destroyed by the Chaos Wastes. The reasoning behind that was that then released Age of Sigmar, which a lot of the units and armies were still there in Age of Sigmar, but had a name change. Like Orcs became Oryx. You had Stormcast Eternals. There's like these new giant humans wearing gold-plated armor.
Fantasy Space Marines.
Yes, I've always called them Sigma Marines because they're from the Age of Sigmar and they're just Space Marines.
Sure.
But yeah, so that was their premise, to fix IP issues, so that way they weren't Orcs that everyone could complain about. They were Oryx and different things like that. They're not elves, they're Ales now. So I've probably butchered that pronunciation, but you get my point. But the other thing too was for them, as AJ was alluding to earlier, was a profit standpoint. Because at that point, Warhammer Fantasy was around for a long time. Experienced gamers had full armies, full collections of the faction. So an example I'll use is Lisbon. So Lisbon have they're dinosaurs, they're big giant reptiles. They've got little skinks, or they've got like your bigger Saurus and your giant Tyrannosaurus Rex sort of looking guys. One edition, the skinks would be really powerful, so everyone would go out that was starting to buy them would go and buy the skinks. The next edition, the skinks weren't so great. The Saurus and the big dinosaurs were a lot better, so you'd go buy them. But then you had the faction. You might have to go and buy one or two of the new models that got released, but that was it. So this was their way of cancelling a whole line and getting people to come into a new line and spend a lot more money. But the problem was Age of Sigmar's release was quite bad. The units got released with no point values. So basically, you would rock up with, I'm going to play with these models. I've got the big balance. I've got all the big shiny toys, and my mate who's struggling and's only got these little things, he'll turn up and play with those, and that was it. So there was no points. There was no sort of structure to the game. And that turned a lot of people off Games Workshop. So
I can imagine.
They've rectified that since, and they brought like with Age of Sigmar 2nd edition and so on it's improved remarkably. But yeah, there was decisions that Warhammer made at that time which not threatened them, but like they were on a decline there. And other games like War Machine and Hordes became quite popular.
Yeah, sure. So they've got Sigma came out in 2015. So you have to imagine 1983 is when Warhammer, the first edition, came out. I believe 9th edition was the last one they did.
8th edition. 9th edition was a community-backed game.
Oh, okay. So 8th edition. So they had 8 versions and up until 2015, and that's when they decided to do the Sigma. But just some of the other games before we carry on with what we should play instead of Warhammer. I'm just going to list some of the classic games they have made because they've made some fucking good games. Like, we do bag on them for being too expensive, version, blah, blah, blah. But they made like Blood Bowl, so fantasy football, fantastic game.
It's probably the best beer and pretzel tabletop game you can play.
Adeptus Titanicus,
That's
which
amazing.
Me and Brock love Adeptus Titanicus. So I've never played the original version, which eventually had Space Marines released and then eventually turned into Epic.
I'll talk. There's a future question. I'll leave that to.
Right. So then you had War Master, which is eventually small scale Warhammer Fantasy.
It's currently got a big community backing too. So
same with Epic.
Yeah, a lot of the Newcastle Gaming Group play a lot of these old school games.
Then you had.
Is there Man of War on that list?
Yeah, you got Man of War,
Pirates,
ships.
pretty fun.
Then you had a board game they released called Space Fleet, which eventually became Battlefleet Gothic, which I personally think is one of their best games they've ever released.
Yep.
Love Battlefleet Gothic. It's essentially their big space hulks, spaceships blowing the shit out of each other. They also released the Lord of the Rings miniature games, which eventually became the Hobbit miniature game, which then eventually became the Middle Earth miniature game currently.
Wasn't bad.
Aeronautica Imperialis, which was their pretty much their fighter pilot one, which was okay. The new version's not that great either. And one of my favorite things they ever did was they released a smaller version of Blood Bowl called Blitz Bowl, which me and Brock have played multiple times.
Yes.
It was only available to start off with at what's the big bookstore in America?
It's just
Barnes & Noble.
Yep.
It was only available at Barnes & Noble, so you can buy it off their website, which I have. They've released, Games Workshop did like 6 little mini game, essentially like starter sets to get into their games. But Blitz Bowl was one of them. It was just 5 player teams, and you get a board, and it's all goal orientated. So you've got cards that flip over the goals, and you're trying to get those to get points, but then also score goals like you would in normal Blood Bowl. Same rules, everything, and it was just, I much preferred that than playing.
It was awesome. But you've
Blood Bowl?
also the Blood Bowl team manager, the card game.
So
I like the card game.
They did lots of IP sharing, which is a lot of IP sharing for video games.
Sure.
Which they've pretty much said they really wish they didn't do. But then they also did they had a big share with Fantasy Flight Games, which was a massive board game company, and they released 2 LCGs, living card games, Warhammer 40k Conquest, which was a great game, and Warhammer, I've got it down there somewhere, it's a fantasy one. What was it called? It doesn't say it on it, but it was an okay game. I've played it a couple of times. Then they also did like a Blood Bowl team manager, which is one of my favorite deck builders ever. It's a fantastic game. But then they had a big thing where they never actually said why they split their partnership, but a lot of people believe it's because they released Star Wars Legion, which is another miniature game, and Games Workshop were like, yeah, no, fuck you. You're trying to march into our territory now.
Yeah, right.
So we're taking all their business away.
Sure.
Which is what a lot of people believe. Who knows what it's true? Their contract may simply have just been up.
Yep.
That could be as simple as it is. Nerds like to make things up. So, off of Games Workshop, what are we can go around the table, say our favourite ones and all that kind of stuff, but some of the games that you would recommend to people that aren't Games Workshop but are still better or just fantastic war games?
So there's two. The first one, like when it came out, I mentioned before, War Machine and Hordes.
Yeah.
It was brilliant. I was actually just talking to one of my mates the other day, and we look back on that year to 2 year time as probably the time we played the most games in that period.
Well, the fantastic thing about that game when it came out was, well, first of all, it was two separate games.
Yeah.
Which then they're like, you know what? The mechanics are pretty much identical, so you can play a Horde army against a War Machine army. The really good thing I loved about it was fucking cheap.
Yes.
It was being the key word there.
It was cheap, and you had
until the fucking creep came in.
Yeah, and you had the opportunity to become like a privateer, I want to say. It's something like that anyway, where you became like a mini spokesperson for them, and like if you cheated around, so then you would get deals and discounts and things from the company.
That being on the company that released it was called Privateer Press.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, so War Machine and Horde I thought was a great game because the basic mission was effectively you had a Warcaster, which was your like main hero,
the boss man.
Yeah, I think Hordes it was called something different, but like in War Machines it was a Warcaster.
They had essentially they were the same game, and the game was you got a total amount of action point pool, and in War Machine you would place your pool of action points on the players you want to activate, and they would spend those action points. Whereas Horde
would generate it through actions, and then you had to your Warcaster had to suck it off them at the end of the game.
Like,
otherwise, the
like
beast.
Reverse.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, so War Machine was like your sci-fi. You had giant robots. Hordes was like your fantasy. You had giant beasts and trolls and that sort of thing. So it worked well. Like you'd have a Warcaster as your central character. You would build an army around him or her with their traits. And the basic mission was you just had to kill the enemy Warcaster. Which meant usually you could have lots of really quick games. Mm-hmm. I had a Crix army built around what was called the Scar Bomb technique, where basically I could it was a Hail Mary shot where I could get in range and kill one of my own guys to make a like nuclear strike on your Warcaster, and hopefully I killed you. If not, I was usually up shit creek without a paddle. But yeah, that was a really good game. The other missions were quite fun, but then second edition came around and just destroyed the game.
It got like full model creep. So by the end of it, it was like first edition, like you could literally buy the starter set, which had a Warcaster and then like 3 Warjacks, which were like the robots they control. Yeah. And then essentially second edition came out and it pretty much bloated out to like Warhammer scale.
Yeah, okay.
Where you've got so many, and it was just the games would go for fucking ever, and it was just
But even then you had like your unit sizes increased. So before, like you could run units of like 5 or 6 or 7. Then it turned into like it had to be a hard 5 or a hard 10. So lots of people had to go out and buy a box of models and then like throw away like half of them because they only needed one more model or something like that. Sure. So, but that and then just the tweaks they made to the rules just took a nosedive. And yeah, it was also then a game where tabletop wargaming can look really beautiful with the terrain and the effort you put into the tables. A lot of War Machine was just played with bits of cutout paper going, this is a hill, this is a forest, and it just lost a lot of its appeal that it had at the start.
Yeah, okay.
But the other game I would recommend to people would be Star Wars Legion.
But just on one last, it has been re-released with Mark IV, 4th edition, and it actually is pretty good now.
Take your word on it.
Yeah.
I said I tried quite hard to sell my War Machine for basically almost $1,000 worth of stuff for $100. I eventually sold it for $75. It was just that hard to sell.
Yeah, well, it's back out, 4th edition, and they've now gone the route of a free app for all your unit stats.
Yep.
So it can constantly be updated, and there's no, like, your cards go out of date and all that kind of stuff.
Warhammer's done that too now.
Yeah. Your next one, Star Wars Legion.
But yeah, Star Wars Legion is not a game I've actually played a lot of, but one I've definitely watched. Again, another one of my mates is quite talented in the game, plays a lot on a lot of tournaments, and went to Worlds last year in America to compete. But basically, it is your 40k, but in your Star Wars universe. Yep. So a lot easier. You will pick a central character, so your Leias, your Darth Vaders, those sorts of characters, and then they will bring strategy cards that you reveal one each turn, which can buff your units and your actions and sort of help dictate how you're going to play that game.
Yeah, we played it once. We played the starter set once. When you've got the starter set, you got the second starter set. I got the first starter set. I really like the the unit activation system in it.
Yep.
That's really nice, where essentially you flip that card and that tells you how many units you can activate, and then you get little activation tokens that you secretly put face down, and then you flip them over and stuff. Oh, you draw them out of a bag, don't you?
You can do either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is, I really like that system. It's my issue. It had the big issue of Fantasy Flight Games being super fucking unreliable with their release schedules and releasing products.
It got quite good at one point. At the moment, the biggest issue they've got for Legion is I think it's just hit a bit of a lull. So there hasn't been a lot of new releases and things. So the meta hasn't changed. So like what's been good now was what was good 8 months ago.
In fairness, the company they own, Atomic Mass Games, have just released a competitive game for it, which is Shatterpoint, which is a smaller miniature account, better miniatures in my opinion, and a better game.
Yeah. But yeah, like I said, Star Wars Legion's got quite the backing in Newcastle and the coast and
it's
around the
lots,
world.
Lots of miniatures. So there's 4 different armies you can essentially play as in it from memory, isn't it?
Yeah, there's
Rebels,
your droids, your clones. I want to say it's Wookiees.
No, it's Rebels, droids, like Darth Vader is people, and Resistance.
Rebels, Imperials, clones, droids, Mauls, the Mauls criminal faction. Like Darth Maul and Ewoks.
There's a few more now.
Yeah, so there's a couple more, but yeah, so as I said, like your command cards help dictate your gameplay because they're personalised around the hero that you've chosen, and it sort of affects them in a bit of a thematic way. So obviously, like your Darth Vader is going to be react differently to your Yodas or your Leia heroes and things like that.
There's a YouTube channel. God, I can't remember it off the top of my head. Art of something, I think he calls himself. It's a dude with long hair.
Right.
And he does a lot of painting stuff, and they have a Patreon where they do really nice terrain and STLs and stuff like that. He actually created a Star Wars Legion army of Jar Jar Binkses. A Jar Jar Binks faction army.
These are the Gungans.
Yeah. And it just looked hilarious. I do like the game. I've played the game multiple times. It's a good fun game. I wasn't a massive fan of it, but I'm not also a massive fan of Star Wars, so that's also...
Yeah, I think that's one of my limiting things why I haven't got into it is, one, I much prefer Age of Sigmar than I'm playing at the moment, but two, I don't mind Star Wars, don't mind the movies, but it's not something that I necessarily grew up on. So like the nostalgia factor of moving Darth Vader around or Yoda around, it's not going to float my boat as much as it does the next person.
Yeah, true.
I had more fun surprisingly building and painting the models than what I did playing through the game. Like, enjoyed the game. I'll definitely play it again, but I definitely got a lot more enjoyment out of painting them and putting them together.
One of the ones I want to mention is not really a game, but if you want to play like a Warhammer-esque world game kind of thing, I highly recommend Mantic Games. So Mantic Games essentially is I don't want to say poor man's Game Workshop, but they've got...
You don't want to say it, you've said it.
It's his special cousin.
Yeah. So they've got War of Kings, which is essentially their Warhammer Fantasy Battles. And it was actually written by the guy who wrote Warhammer Fantasy. So it's the same dude who wrote the rules, and it's a very similar game. It's a good fun game. One of the big things they did where Warhammer had you had to have a tray and you had to put your units in there and you just die, you pull them off. Yep. They've just kind of gone, I think that's how it was in their first edition, but their second edition they went, you know what, fuck it. You've got your units. It has to be this big on a base. Whatever you want to do on top of it, that's fine. As long as if you want to make it look pretty, you can have 2 models on there. That we all know that tray size represents 10 units kind of thing.
Yeah, unit filling. That's becoming a common thing in was a common thing in fantasy, especially for armies that took like goblins or like Skaven, where there was just hundreds of models. Or zombies was another great one where you would just have like a giant gravestone in the middle of your unit just because it was easier to have that than 70 zombies.
Yeah, so they had that, and then they also had Warpath, their Warpath game, which essentially was their science fiction game. And they had like essentially Space Marine people. They've got the Plague, which are pretty much the Tyranids, that kind of stuff. they didn't go very well. They had their Warpath, which was essentially a mass battle sci-fi game, but they did it more like a rank and file game. So you had movement trays and you'd have 2 units on that movement tray kind of thing. And then they had Warpath Firefight, which was their skirmish game like Warhammer 40k. They never went really well, and then recently they've re-released Firefight, and it's really nice. The system's great, works really well, and they are currently, as of 2 days away, I believe, from time of recording this, Warpath is coming back to Kickstarter, and it is now Epic Warpath, baby. Little tiny minis, and the rules look fantastic, and it's going to be cheap as shit compared to that fucking slop that Games Workshop have released. And they have 4 factions, not just one faction with different fucking names, which I hate the Horus Heresy for that exact reason. I don't want to play Space Marines. I want to play other fucking factions.
Yeah, so the Heresy is, again, another big game that's quite big in the Newcastle and our local area, but it's never appealed to me. Like Dark Angels, they're my Space Marine faction, but the enjoyment of playing 40k was playing against Tyranids or playing against Tau or the Elder, and it was a different mechanic where...
And that's the best thing about the OG Epic.
Yeah. Whereas Heresy, it's just Space Marines on Space Marines with some slightly different special rules and things like that. So it's not exactly... You're not versing an exact mirror, but it's pretty close.
But yeah, so that's what I'm really looking forward to with Warpath. Because, I mean, the 4 faction, they've got their... I believe they're releasing the Dwarves, the... Asterians, which are like Eldar essentially, the Plague, and their Space Marine people, which I believe are called the UNSC. Or no, that's Halo.
That's Halo.
Something.
It might just be the USC,
yeah, but
or
also,
something like that. Anyway,
mentioning Halo, Mantic have just successfully received the rights for the Halo miniature game, which they'll be doing later this year.
Yes. Which
I believe they've said is going to be a 28mm scale.
Yep.
So it's not going to be tiny epic scale like the old school one that was released, which we've played once, which was okay.
Yeah, it was okay.
So look forward to that. So that's Mantic. They're great to check out. And if you want if you have already started playing Warhammer or Fantasy or anything like that, I would highly recommend for anyone to go and check out Osprey Games. Do you know Osprey Games?
Nope.
So essentially, Osprey Games are Osprey are a book publishing company, and they've, in the last 6 years or something, I think it is, they've started releasing games. So, but these are every single game they release is miniature agnostic, meaning any miniatures you've got, you can use to play these games. One of their most famous games, which a lot of people have played, is Gaslands.
Oh, no, yeah, I've heard of Gaslands.
Yeah. So Gaslands is essentially the movie Death Race. It's this game. You go out, you buy some Hot Wheels or some Matchbox cars, you slap some fucking rockets and shit on them, paint them up, and you play with those in the thing. And all you need is the book. It comes with paper templates, or you can buy the templates. It comes with stickers that you can stick on your dice for the dice that it uses in it. It's a good, fun game.
It is.
And all you need is a $2 Hot Wheels car. Well, they're $2 in Australia. They're probably 20 cents in America, the way Australian tax works. But yeah, $2, and then you can literally use the cars, or if you want to make it a bit more aesthetically pleasing, you just slap some fucking matchsticks that's on there and make them look like Mad Max, and you're good to go.
And typically anybody who's into wargaming in some way, shape or form, you have a bits box.
That's
you
it.
will find stuff to put on there.
And some of the other games they've got Frostgrave. You can think of Frostgrave essentially like a Dungeons and Dragons style role-playing game. Had a really drunken night with a fantasy skirmish game, and they had this baby. And it's miniature agnostic again. Essentially, you have a wizard, you choose a wizard, and then from that wizard you pick your little offsider people, and you play against an opponent. But then the game can also bring monsters and stuff in, but then all the games are campaign driven. So depending on how your characters go, how much damage they take, they may die, you may have to get a new wizard, all that kind of stuff, and it goes through a campaign. And then there's I think they've up to 10 or 11 campaign books now that you can go through these whole things. You can carry your characters over.
I think we played through one of them. It's a good fun game.
It's a fantastic
It's awesome
system.
fun.
And they've just released Stargrave,
yes,
which is their sci-fi version of it. And I believe it's got 2 or 3 campaign books now. And the same guy who wrote that also created Rangers of Shadow Deep, which is
Actually, I think we played that.
we played Rangers of the Shadow Deep, which is a co-op skirmish game where you always play against the game, and it's you play through an adventure book, which is just it is so much fun to play, and you can play it solo if you want. So if you don't have anyone to play with, whip the book out. You can buy the PDF, download it, print it, whatever, and then just play the game. Or you can play it with your friend, and you each take like a ranger and some little minions that with you, and you fight zombies and all this kind of stuff. You have to try and find things in the books. It uses a deck of playing cards for events that happen and stuff like that.
And
Fantastic game.
And it is a super simple rule set to pick up. Like it guides you through, exactly as AJ said, guides you through your campaign, so it is simple from that perspective. But even the mechanics about your movement and your fighting, so to speak, is super simple. It's 2 D20s, one's yours, one's theirs, and then apply whatever modifiers you've got to your character and their character. Whoever wins, wins. And it is that simple. Like, you might have a couple more hit points than the bad guy, but let's just say it's one of those games where it's easy to die.
Yeah, and Osprey
but it is good fun. It gets that tension.
They've got so many other games as well. Like I've got a couple of their books down here, and one's called Black Ops, and it's essentially modern military, where you play and like it's got full on these like hardcore rules about like you're playing until you're detected, and then the sirens go off, and then all this other stuff appears and all this kind of thing. But then it activates via you get a normal playing deck of cards, and you have to shuffle them, and then an ace might activate these certain miniatures, and then this one activates these certain miniatures. They've got one that they've just released, which I bought the book for, and we haven't played yet. Is essentially
is the skirmish one, isn't it?
No, it's imagine warships, but they've discovered it was during Edison or something like that, one of those ones, and pretty much he got alien technology or something, and all the ships now fly, so it's like an aerial battle, but it's all like warships in the air, which is really cool concept. So I thoroughly love that. So they're some of my ones I reckon you should check out. Mantic Games, so they've got those. Some of the ones we didn't mention for Mantic is Armada, which is
I was going to say
if you like Phantom Man of War from Warhammer, it's that, but bigger ships and a fucking great game.
Yeah, that was going to be one of mine, was Armada. Like, getting onto the tabletop, just a big blue tabletop, throw some outcroppings of rocks and a few sea beasts and whatnot. That's a really, really cool one to play through. And the scenarios that you can play through as well are really, really well built. And they can cause some absolute chaos within the game whilst you're trying to battle through each other as well. So yeah, Mantic, the Armada one is really, really good fun.
And Mantic
not to be confused with Star Wars Armada.
Correct. Yes, Mantic have also done a really good thing, which I was very surprised when I heard about it. But then I'm like, okay, well, it just makes sense in this modern time. Is they now have essentially an STL Patreon on their website kind of thing with a Mantic Vault, where you pay $15 a month, or 15 Australian a month, and every month they give you STLs. And I essentially since I've backed it from day one, and I have all of the Armada ships STLs, so I can print them off. Even though we bought the original sets, I bought 2 armies originally, but I have essentially every army now to play with, and I'm not going to stop paying them because they keep giving me models to play with.
And I think they've opened it up outside of Armada as well. It's like being the Mantic Vault. They're giving you all sorts of shit.
Yeah, so you get stuff
a lot of their games
War Kings,
as well.
You get stuff Warpath, you get that. There's got another sport one, Overpower Sports one. But yeah, highly recommend it. All right, Brock, what do you got?
I was going to say, well, you pinched my Armada, but one of the ones I was also going to say that was really, really good and has a really, really big, widespread amount of games is one-page rules. That is
another one.
That is a really awesome system, which is a good sidetrack. It's pretty much a full proxy thing, except people behind one-page rules do have Patreons, or you can go on to not GameFound. There's another website where you can go. Anyways, Google One Page Rules, and you can actually go on there and you can get all
My
of
Mini
their
Factory has
My Mini Factory. Yeah.
Stuff,
They can go through that, and you can get all their STLs through there as well for any of the factions.
Their Patreon is so worth the money.
Yep.
I've had it for a long time, and the amount of STLs you get is fucking ridiculous.
And yeah, the gameplay, like, it's definitely,
it's not the best game on earth, but it's nice
still
and simple.
fun, though.
Yeah.
From what I've heard of it, it is a good proxy for like your 40k and your fantasy, where
it's more older Warhammer 40k.
Yeah, so that way,
good.
They've got
so they've got
Grimdark. They've got Grimdark. They've got the Grimdark game, which is 40k. Then they've got Grimdark,
Fantasy.
like a skirmish version of Grimdark. Then they've got a rank and file fantasy, a Sigma style fantasy. Then just a skirmish fantasy.
They've got a Starship
They've
game
got
as well.
a spaceship one, which they're currently redoing.
Okay.
Then they also, for a little bit there, released like Shadespire style game for a bit there, which I think is still on their website you can get. And one of the good things, if you back the Patreon, you get the full rule book. So you can go get the rules for free, which is just the one page, which is super simple, basic game. Or you can get the full rule book from that, or you can buy it on drive-through games as well. And it's got the basic rules, but then it's also got a page of, hey, you can add this rule. Hey, you can add this rule. Hey, you can add this rule, like Fog of War. Or you can add, you have little tiny men, epic style men. You can play it this way if you want to play with them. And yeah, so it's really worth the coin. It's not worth the coin, it's free. So,
and yeah, a couple of the other ones sort of moving away from that Warhammer-esque type games, but just some war games, which is super fun. Right Quest. That is an awesome game system where you just turn up with a bunch of minis. They've each got their own card. You get you lay it with the starter sets. You get just a paper mat. AJ will throw up one day the board that he actually made.
I'll chuck it on our Instagram.
Yeah, put it up there. People can have a gander at that, which is awesome, and it's awesome to play on. Super fun. Randomized starting points through your portals, and
you start with 10. The cool thing is you bring 10 minis, and then you deploy four at a time, and one dies, and you deploy another one in the next round. And it's goal orientated with a deck of cards. So you flip a card, you try and get the goals. First to 7 scrap wins the game. I think we played games that have gone for 5 minutes. We played games that have gone for 40 minutes. It's so much fun. The minis are awesome. Small mini count, so it's cheap. I think it's so they're trying to go that route with it, but
and they do like release some of the almost like a campaign type thing where you get some of the bigger miniatures, and the idea is that you would have a co-op to verse that like big bad, so to speak. They did release a couple of those, and I think that latest Kickstarter was built around something like that. And because they'd already released, I think this might have been the third one they were going to release.
Kickstarter,
and it as you said, it fell short. But no, that's a super awesome, fun game, simple to play. It's always fun rolling some dice. Exactly, great. Cheap. And one other one which I love playing, but it got a little bit out of hand when it comes to the wallet. Marvel Crisis Protocol.
It's great.
It's such a
good... Haven't played it, but have seen it played, and it looks like fun. But yeah, the cost to get involved was already always put me off.
No, it's one of those
crazy
things. To get involved, it's not that bad. I think the original box set, I think I picked it up for about $100, maybe $120, and that gave you 10 miniatures, the rule book, a whole bunch of terrain,
all your dice,
all that. So, and that was quite reasonable, especially for how fun.
Playable out of the box.
But the problem is it is so good out of the box, and because it's Marvel driven for all your Marvel characters, it is like fucking crack.
Yep.
And so you just want to start getting more, and then they'll release a new character like, oh my god, like get that.
Even then, they're 38mm minis, I think.
Yep.
So they're fairly big. So they're juicy to paint. They're nice to paint. They're beautiful sculpts.
Yes.
And the models weren't that expensive.
No, they weren't.
They'd release as either a single pack or a double pack.
You get a single for like $20, a double for maybe $40, depending on what it was. And
I think from memory, depending on how big the mini was, like your Modocs were about $40 to $50 for the model, but then some of the other ones are like $30 for a model, and then your double packs would go from like $50 up to like $80 for a double pack, and you get like each pack you buy You get your mini. You get multiple bases that you put them on, whichever kind of one you want. You get the card for the character.
Or at least you get multiple of the base required, so you could
you
pick of those
the card of the character,
options.
and then a token sheet, which would have tokens that are specific to objective cards that you would get in each pack. So each pack had objective cards. Only criticism of the game is it has like action cards that you have a deck. You create like a deck of these action cards, which you can play at any time to do X to like heal you and stuff like that. And usually they're very specific to the characters you're bringing. So you have to put a lot of effort into building this deck. And in all honesty, when me and Brock play, we forget we've even fucking got them.
Yeah.
It's
one thing that I get the intent behind that. And I suppose if you get like to that competitive S type thing, I get it. But if you're just kicking around at home, it doesn't bring value to the game. But yeah, super awesome fun game to play. And nowadays, as you've touched on a couple of times, getting STLs and downloads and stuff to 3D print, there's a whole bunch of Patreons out there these days where I tell you what, you're not going to get Dr. Doom, but you'll get the Doctor.
Yep.
And he looks, he resembles a certain Dr. Doom and the likes.
And there's a big community who have
massive
community making cards for characters that aren't in the game.
Yep.
And essentially, usually they'll take, let's take that character and we'll convert it to this character and change some names and maybe adjust the rules a little bit. Yeah. And you can play with that. And like 90% of my minis are 3D printed ones with character cards that I found online.
Exactly. I mean, like perfect example there is you've got Hulk, who was one of the early models released. Nowadays you can get not for like legal within the game realms, but it's you can get Abomination. It's pretty much the same card as a Hulk, except for like maybe one or two tweaks around the wording for what it is. But they're the same power, same health, same like roll stats and whatnot to actually hit your target. So that's just an example of it. Yeah. But no, they're probably two of mine that outside of the realm of that Warhammer-esque good fun. Good fun.
Great. Any other games we want to tell the people about?
Oh, Jesus.
Like there are plenty out there.
No, I'll touch on Epic, but as I said, there's another question later on, so I'll save my Epic talk for then.
Okay. Well, let's jump into you, Zachary, for a little bit here. You recently went to a little convention. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah. So I every year around Australia Day, me and a bunch of mates head on down to Canberra to an event called CanCon. Basically, it's just a giant tabletop wargaming fest. There's tournaments going around. I entered the Age of Sigmar tournament, which had about 200 players in it.
And how'd you go?
I've done better. Considering, but in saying that, I was quite happy with how I went. As the game one of the tournament was my first game of Age of Sigmar since the before. So did all right. 1-2, lost 3. The 2 games I lost were basically by 1 or 2 rolls of the dice. So wasn't
fair enough.
Yeah, it's deserved.
So you didn't take your rigged dice to this game?
No. Left those bad boys at home by mistake. But no, yeah. So CanCon, it's just a giant excuse to go down, play some games, roll some dice. We book out the Red Cedar Motel, basically about 5 or 6 rooms between us, and we go to their community room there at night time and just drink a few beverages, play a few games. Do that most nights we're down there. We head on to tradies for dinner, but obviously at the con we're just there to play games. They've got massive trade stalls all throughout the venue, so you can buy models there. You can buy accessories. There's it's a general nerd event, so there were cosplay things. So you could buy all your Viking steins and your D&D mats and lots of things like that. There was dice stalls, anything you could ask for, including someone dressed up as a Death Guard Space Marine walking around.
Damn.
That'd have been awesome.
It was quite impressive.
So I've not been to CanCon before, but it's definitely on the list of wants to do. Is it a place as well where you can sort of turn up with not necessarily anything that you've brought from a game perspective and actually try out maybe some new systems or games they've got there that they want people to try?
Yeah, there's definitely a couple of those. One is called Dragon Dice, I believe it was. Some of our mates from our local gaming club are involved in that setup, but yeah, there is a couple of things like those. Good Games has a massive stall there where you can try a few of their board games before you go to, obviously they go to their stall and then purchase them for them.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, there's space for that, but usually like the bulk of it is to go in tournaments, but there are tournaments there where it is super serious, like the Age of Sigmar. If There were 2 spots for that tournament to go to Worlds in America this year. Legion had something similar with flights to Worlds included as well.
Wow.
But then there are other tournaments where like they're friendly tournaments, so you're there just to play the games in a tournament environment. But
you're there to have some fun.
Yeah,
and just get a bit of
hopefully
a-
your opponent on the other side of the table is not
a fuckwit.
Yeah, to put it nicely. But yeah,
So you're playing for bragging
in
rights,
all
and whoever's
honesty-
shouting the beer at when you head off to the pub.
In all honesty, that's the only reason I do not play any competitive TCGs or war games is because generally 90% of the people that fucking play them in those tournaments are fucking pay to win dickwads. That is just, it removes the fun from the game.
No, yeah, listen, Magic, I only really dabbled in it once and dabbled in it quite hard to the point where
So it wasn't a dabbling.
No, it wasn't. In the grand scheme of things, it was dabble, but at the time it was not
That was-
dabbling.
I believe that's called chasing the dragon.
To the point where I quickly realised if I actually wanted to play somewhat competitively with a deck I had made, it was go online and purchase the 20 cards you needed to make the deck work, and that was it. Because, having to do that every expansion just put me off because of the power creep involved.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
But yeah, like I said, my experience of CanCon, I've played Epic there for most of the time, but have shifted to the last 3 times now of playing Age of Sigmar, and I've always come away with versing good opponents. Usually, I really don't think I've had an opponent I've been unhappy to play against.
Cool.
Usually by the 5th game on day 2, the last game, it's really helpful to have an opponent that's got a bit of personality about them. That would have been my worst game opponent-wise, is just he was a bit of a beige person. Nothing really going on in banter or things. So
Sure.
I was quite tired. His army had the skills and things to beat mine quite easily. So it was definitely, I was pushing shit uphill before a dice was rolled.
In all honesty, by that point, if I go, by that point, I'm going to be fucking hungover as fuck after that many days of drinking.
But that's it. So like by that point, I just wanted some personality and to have a bit of charisma about him, but he just didn't. So that was my worst experience. So if that's it, I'm not too upset with the 2 days of
That's
gaming.
right.
So.
That's fair enough.
Next year, I'm going.
Yep.
And I'm going to go to the Warhammer 40k one tournament. I'm just going to enter my Warlord Titan, and that's it.
Just that.
That's my army. Just my Warlord Titan, and let's see motherfuckers try it. Let's just watch people beat that.
Excuse me, can you please show us your GW stamp?
My
Or your certificate of authenticity?
It's around here somewhere, I swear to God.
That's why you go on the friendly tournament. It's not sponsored then.
Exactly.
You're fine.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's my War Master one, which the model doesn't actually exist.
I am here in this friendly tournament. I'm going to decimate you all.
Well, that sounds awesome, and it's one of those ones you've told me about it multiple times, and I've always wanted to go, and I'd always forget, or just it's one of those things of you tell me about it, and then it's like, oh, it's like next week. I can't afford to go now.
Yeah, well, I said like for Age of Sigmar, it's basically I have alarms set for the days the tickets are being released.
Sure.
Because if you're not in straight away, you're basically not getting a spot. And
That's for the tournament
That's
itself?
for the tournament, yeah. So entry, I believe there isn't a cost to just enter and walk around, but tournaments all have a paid ticket you need to purchase.
Sure.
And then the other aspect of CanCon is always the buy, sell, swap store.
Yep.
I made an absolute killing this year because of selling a bunch of my old models that I haven't touched in decades.
Yeah, your War Machine for $75.
No,
Absolute killing.
Yeah, that was last year. No, I sold a lot of my square-based fantasy with the release of the old world just happening. So a lot of that was in quite the demand.
Winner. All right, well, that sounds awesome, and we'll definitely have to make it. We'll go down there and we'll do a podcast there.
Yeah.
It's definitely
Set up a stall.
Yes, we'll do a podcast and we'll just get drunk and just ramble and listen to the podcast get worse and fucking worse.
You mean better?
Oh, better, yeah, 100% better.
There was a stall this year of someone selling like novelty gins and vodkas. So if you set up next to her, you're set.
Yeah, there's a dude.
We said
There's a dude down here in the Hunter Valley that sells like potion mead.
Yeah.
One of our boys in the D&D group
yeah.
brought it out. It's fucking horrible, but I
it.
don't like mead, so it's horrible to me. But people who like mead would probably like it. But it's all done up like fantasy style and stuff.
To be fair, it might have just been the setting for enjoying the drink itself. may have not been that nice, but I enjoyed it thoroughly.
No, but yeah, it's a CanCon. Like for me now, it's less about the gaming per se, and more about just it's a weekend away with some mates.
Well, that'd be the main reason I'd go.
Yeah, so like the gaming is a side thing. If I wanted to have taken it seriously, I would have played more games before the first game and actually trialed my list and worked on it, not just built a list and painted and played it and hoped it went well. But yeah, as I said, for me, it's basically my big gaming trip of the year where I'll head down there for about 3 or 4 nights and enjoy ourselves.
Sounds good. All right, well let's jump on to some more talk about nerdy things of gaming perspective. Let's go with what dead system would you like to revive if you could revive one?
So it would have been Square-based Fantasy, but that's currently just been revived with the old world. So that's being re-released by Games Workshop. It's a combination of all their old editions sort of rolled into one, so it's sort of a best of from what I've seen so far. Yet to play a game of it, and we'll probably not play just for a little bit only because of life commitments. But the other system I would like Games Workshop to bring back as it was the old Epic Armageddon. I had a period of time where I stopped playing tabletop gaming just for a bunch of other reasons, but Epic is what got me back into it. It's a community-driven system at the moment, which is really fun. The only issue is it's a community-driven, so everyone wants to bicker about what rules need to be changed or what armies need to be changed.
And there's like 3 different rule set. There's like EU Epic. Yeah,
there's Epic UK, there's the French Epic, and Net EA Epic.
Yeah.
So the problem we found quickly is after playing it non-stop for about 3 or 4 years is we knew what was strong, what was not. So we run it. When we play now, we have the don't be a dick rule. So basically you need to create a list without being a dick, and the TOs will often...
AJ's out because he's going to turn up with his fucking Titan.
I'll turn up with my 28mm Warlord Titan and put that on the table for your little tiny fucking peeps.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's a 6mm game where you just play what you need to. There's plenty of different 3D files you can get to print and do what you need to.
Lots of them.
And it's so much easier to paint. One of the things that's helped me stop playing 40k in Fantasy Time was the fact painting 28mm sucked when you're not a great painter. But 6mm became paint by numbers, undercoat, pick out 2 or 3 details, give it a wash, and you're done.
Brush, yeah. And the other really good thing about Epic I love is the fact that you can have an entire army in a little fucking container.
A little red toolbox.
I did, like, I've got one printed out, and it all went into like the little the plastic compartments you can just pick up at your Bunnings and whatnot. And then the last model I printed, I didn't even think about it, but it's a little bit bigger, so I can't close the fucking lid.
At one point we had a different variety sizes of the red toolboxes from Bunnings, depending on what army you're taking. But no, overall I think Epic is just a fun, smooth system. There are a few rule tweaks that just need to be made to make it completely fun, but overall...
I think you're going to look forward to Epic Warpath. I reckon it's I reckon it'll scratch the itch for you.
I look forward to it.
Kickstarter goes live in like 2 days or something like that.
No, I'm pretty sure it's tomorrow.
I'm going 100% all in on that motherfucker, so... Yeah, I'll have multiple armies, so you'll be able to come and test it, and then you can buy your own.
But yeah, so the other one would have been Square-based Fantasy.
You can use my army once, but never again.
But yeah, the old world has just been released by GW, and it's driven the world by storm, basically the gaming world by storm of all the ex-fantasy players. Some of it, one of my mates was actually the first Australian Warhammer Master, won that tournament, so yeah, he's straight back into it, and there's lots of theory crafting and everything going on in all my group chat, so it's a great place to be.
Well, I think mine... probably yet again it is a Warhammer Games Workshop game, and that is Battlefleet Gothic. It is just such a great system. I love the spaceship battling, and like Armada, like Star Wars Armada, it's good, but it's just fucking, it's like, dials on little templates that you got to fucking spin around, like same with X-Wing. Like, it just annoys me. I just love the rule set for Gothic was fantastic. The minis look amazing, and again, you had multiple factions, like all the Xeno factions, Eldar, all that kind of stuff, and they all felt completely different to play. Like Eldar felt so much different to other armies to play.
So my biggest issue with getting into Gothic was I got into played against a mate that was quite a good gamer and playing the Necron fleet, which basically there's the Battlefleet Gothic rule system, and then there's the Necron rule system, which trumps Battlefleet Gothic. Yep. So that's kind of squashed my interest in the game. But it's always definitely been a game where if anyone's playing it at our local club, it's definitely a game I'll stop by and watch 10, 15 minutes of it just to enjoy it.
But again, like the rules are, you can get the rules. Games Workshop actually released the rules for free back in the day before they turned into pricks and got rid of all the old system rules that you could download for free. But they are on the internet. You can get them easily. And there's shitloads of people that do 3D models for them that you can download. So you can print entire fleets and stuff. And you don't need many ships either on your fleet. It's really, really great, this system. Highly love it. And I love that aesthetic of looking at a star map on a table.
I was going to say
with just those little ships floating in the air on their clear bases. Oh, it just looks so good.
So it's not a dead system, but just to touch on like the space battle type things, drop fleet.
Drop fleet, yeah.
That's the system. Like it's not dead or anything, but just talking that sort of gameplay. I thought that's good fun.
It's a great. I like that because that's written by the guy that did Battlefleet Gothic. Funnily enough,
Well, there you go.
So it's a great system, but it's just I think they had the issue where Hawk Games released it, and they went bankrupt.
Sure.
And then TT Combat bought the system off them, and it just never. TT Combat aren't great at advertising their gaming systems, so like not many people really know it exists. And it's like the minis look fucking beautiful.
Oh yeah.
The gameplay is great because it's not just space combat; it's like outer orbit combat. So you're floating in like the different layers of the atmosphere and stuff.
And like to touch on that, it then expands into your drop zone, which is your skirmish based.
Yeah.
Like army where you've
Essentially epic scale.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Have you played either of those, Zach?
I've seen Drop Zone played, but that's about it. It's dabbled in Gothic, but haven't really played much of the Drop Zone games.
No, they're good. I got
fun.
plenty of armies and stuff. So if everyone have a crack at that, we can definitely have a crack at that.
But then one thing from a system I wouldn't mind seeing come back a little bit more. Like I haven't been gaming for that long, so I haven't seen many systems die.
Yep,
to be honest.
Fair enough.
But Wrath of Kings.
Yes.
So when that sort of like I got an army and got as much as I could at the time because it was cheap as shit because because it was dying.
Because I backed the Kickstarter and then we played a game and then you were like, I'm in.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I played a game of that with you. Yeah.
And I mean that's just an awesome, fun system. And I would love to see that sort of rejuvenated or revived.
So that was by Simon.
Yep. That awesome game, unfortunately, on its last legs. You can pick up a few models here and there from places, but it's just got no support.
Another great system, which isn't dead, but technically is dead because the company are fucking useless, Relic Knights. So me and you have played Relic Knights. I don't know if you've ever played. It's like an anime-themed one.
I want to say I've had a conversation with you about it. I don't think I've ever played it, but I've definitely talked about it.
Had a Kickstarter, a hugely successful Kickstarter for the first edition, got released, all that kind of stuff. It's done by Ninja Division or Soda Pop Minis, whichever one you want to call them. They did a second Kickstarter, but then they kind of did that Kickstarter thing that companies do where they put too much money into one project and then that like to deliver the first project, but then they've got two in the back burner and then they lost money and Super Dungeon Explorer and all that. It was a big fucking debacle. And they're technically still sending out minis and stuff like that. Like every now and then I get something from them, or you can like, if you go on the website and buy something, you can get some of the minis that we've got from your Kickstarter and we'll send them to you for free if you buy something else from our website. But it is a sensational game.
Yeah.
Like some of the cool mechanics are there's no deployment zones. So you've got I think it's 2x2 or
3x3 game.
3x3 mat.
And then it's just not within, I think it's 6 of
you
another
can't deploy within certain
Maybe I have played a game with this.
of each. And then so you've got
card-based.
all card-based. And it's like no dice, so you get a deck of cards, you shuffle them, you draw them, they've got colours on them. One's a big symbol, one's a small symbol. Big symbol's worth 2 points, small symbol's worth 1. All your abilities are like you need 2 yellows, 1 green to do this ability. And your blocks are like you need this many blocks and stuff. But when you activate a unit, that unit will let you draw X amount of cards to add to your hand to do certain things. And to lean into the sort of anime aspect of it, all your units get double movement. So you move, you can do an action, and then you do another move at the end of your activation. So all the minis are always fucking going all around the board. And it's great fun, and it's just really sad that the company just couldn't handle money.
And from memory, that was more of a pass-based round, wasn't it? Where you play like turn for turn until you get one person passes, and then the opposite gets like their final turn or something.
No, I think it was activation.
It was activation
because
because maybe it wasn't broken down into rounds. We haven't played in a while, where you could get like multiple activations with your units as well.
Yeah, I can't really remember,
like
but yeah, it's a great game. Highly recommend it. All right. We've got one more little sort of mini talk thing, and then we're going to go on to the host versus the guest. So our last one is, if we were going to make a game about, like a mini game about anything, what would your game be?
Well, before that,
yep.
Released. We've sort of touched on a couple, like looking forward to getting released and whatnot. So
Yep.
I think we've touched on it a little bit. There was one other one that I wanted to talk about that I was pretty keen on its release, or at least I was keen on its release. Modifius bringing out the new Fallout skirmish game.
Oh, I did. I've seen a thing about that. Yeah.
So they've more or less they've gotten some feedback in relation to the what's it called, Fallout something.
That game was a fucking mess.
It was. I enjoy it. I play it every now and again, just like sort of playing through a single like campaign mission type. It was built about being super like cinematic gameplay, and like we're giving you a scenario to play through, and because they gave you a scenario to play through, it was always like a scenario with two people to
necessarily taking like a current pirate faction from the game, but you're going to build your own sort of pirate game in that sort of world.
So you'd kind of essentially you'd build a pirate team, like you get a boat, you'd build a team, your crew for it, and your crew would get certain abilities.
Yeah, exactly that sort of thing. So like having them all have those sort of different powers, and then obviously having the water being as a legitimate threat to your different users. So there's pros and negatives to taking more powers or not taking powers. So. And as I said, that could then morph into, like, I guess you just build a single character and it's in the, a D&D esque game. But yeah, that was something
because that could work really, because like Frostgrave, essentially in like Rangers of Shadow Deep that we talked about earlier, that essentially is that kind of game where you build out your main character and then all your other characters. So in this case, your crew are just generic characters that you take. They have a generic stat block for that type of character. So let's say you need a mechanic, you take the mechanic, and the mechanic has that stat block. And then as you progress through games and games, through like a campaign mode, you'd potentially be adding X to those guys to make them a little bit stronger in your crew, or they die and you have to hire a new crew and stuff.
I said, it's less of a brand new game concept and more probably of just a game thematic.
I would 100% play that. 100% play that. Brock?
For me, it's a very similar thing. Like, it's one of those things where in the background I've got a couple of things that I'm trying to piece together around like a game concept, so to speak.
Yep.
But one thing that I would love to see, and it brings me back to the old anime, I would love to see a Dragon Ball RPG if it hasn't been done yet.
Dragon Ball
Z.
J-Car.
Yep.
Not J-Car, it's a fucking electronics company in Australia. Jazco Games.
Jazco, yep.
So they released the Street Fighter fighting game.
Yep.
They announced that they had the license to do Dragon Ball Z,
Sure.
and they were going to do a Dragon Ball Z fighting miniature game.
Miniature game?
Yeah, it came pre-paint. It was going to come pre-painted, all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
It was a fighting game for Dragon Ball Z, and they teased the hell out of it, but then that was
Went nowhere.
4 years ago now.
Yeah,
They
okay.
said that, and nothing's ever happened.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing they lost the license.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Like, so for me, I would definitely think I'd prefer to play through an RPG of that,
Yep.
and just sort of play through the Dragon Ball Z, sort of go through those sagas and whatnot. I think that'd be awesome. But to touch on like the miniatures and whatnot, I would much prefer to get unpainted, because I think I would highly enjoy actually putting those models together and painting them as well.
See, I'm not good painting muscles and skin tones.
I'm not
so-
good at it, but I think I would
Yeah.
enjoy it.
I've hated it for most of my gaming experience. I'm starting to get into it, but I think that's, again, I'm more getting into it with the GW contrast paints or army
Yep.
paint
Yep.
I have. I believe they're called speed paints,
Yeah.
Yep.
which effectively are a two-in-one. It's your undercoat, it's your
Yeah.
wash, it's all done. So it's making it a lot easier to do that.
I think-
I'd love to get all the little guys going through there and then finish it off with a big old Shenron right in
See,
the back. That'd be
that would have to
awesome.
be. They would have to be not 28mm. It'd have to be closer to your MCP, like 38mm, or
Yep.
even that Games Workshop Inquisitor you were talking about, which was like 40
Yeah, that was huge.
something mil, like that big fuck off minis.
I agree.
It'd have to be something like that to like get that meat in, and then also because you're only going to be using one or two minis kind of thing, you'd be wanting to move that stuff around. Yeah. For me, I really, really, really want a Zoid game. I love Zoids. I love the world of Zoids. I love the idea of getting in those big mechanized tigers and fucking dinosaurs and shit like that. So I don't know what, I'd love that, and I'd love it to be kind of a kitchen game. So like what they call like Warcraft, not Warcraft, Warcry, Warhammer 40k, what's the
Kill Team?
Kill Team. So like 3-4 minis.
Yep.
And it's all like, so you'd have those stat cards for your sort of Zoids and stuff, and it's all, each one is very different, but you have to work as a team. So it'd have very big sort of team dynamics of a lot of building of your team stuff. But I don't know really what mechanics I would use in it, but I want a Zoid game.
I've just thought of the mechanics I would add if this was to become like a tablet game. Would be Mordheim. Did you ever play Mordheim?
Yes, Mordheim, yeah.
So Mordheim basically was like set in the fantasy world, but like you would have like your little gangs, your crews, and it would be a campaign-based thing where you would at the end of each game you'd get missions and things, or characters would die. So obviously you'd have to replace them or things like that, and you could upskill your things. So Mordheim was always a fun game to get through if you had the crew that could play it consistently.
Okay.
All right, well, that's all the that stuff out of the way. So let us get to host versus guest. Okay, so to start off with, same as we did last episode, we are going to play the Blockbuster game. Now, the way this works is we're playing the head-to-head from the Blockbuster game. I'm going to read out, as an example, I'm going to read out movies with cowboys. And whichever one of either Brock or Zach jumps in, like Cowboys versus Aliens, etc., the buzzer will go.
Brock.
And then you have 15...
Cowboys vs. Aliens.
Then you have 15 seconds.
That was my one.
You have 15 seconds to rebuttal with another movie. And then once you say it, I'll hit the buzzer. The next person has 15 seconds. Once 15 seconds is up, that person loses.
I was great at this last time.
If you lose,
Yep.
it's not a good look on you.
I lost last time.
He lost his one last time. So we'll do the best of three in the head-to-head game. Sequels...
sequels count
Harry
as
Potter,
one, yep.
all Harry Potters are Harry Potters, etc., etc. And depending on how hard the movie name is to say, if you don't say the full name, that's fine. You can't repeat all that kind of stuff. Okay, so let's go through here. Oh, this is an interesting one to start us off with. All right, so once the first person that jumps in, the clock will start, and the next person has to rebuttal. So, movies that begin with a W.
Wonka.
Wonka.
World of Warcraft.
Ten seconds. Oh, he's gone stale face.
All I can say is Lethal Weapon, but that was
No,
a
no, that's
all that's going through my head right now is Lethal Weapon.
Boom. First round goes to Brock, ladies and gentlemen. The hosts have the first go of head-to-head. All right, now this is best of 3 for head-to-head, so let's go with...
I won one.
Let's try and find a nice nerdy one here.
I can see a bunch of the movies in my head. I just can't remember their names.
All you can see is W and a picture of what's going on.
It's one of those games where you play it and then you're like, I know all these movies, and all of a sudden you're like, oh God, I don't know any of them. It's very interesting. All right, so
It's like any sort of trivia game.
oh God, we're going back. All right. Okay, we are back. This is round 2 of the head-to-head. First person to say the answer, the clock will start. As I said, movies with aliens.
Aliens.
Cowboys and Aliens.
Monsters vs. Aliens.
Predator.
Captain Marvel.
The thinking is happening. Brock is thinking. He has 5 seconds left.
Attack on Mars.
Toy Story. Green Aliens.
They're toys.
I was really put my hopes on that one.
5 seconds.
No.
Star Trek, man. Star
See, that's
Wars.
what I mean. Stargate.
All right. Well, the hosts
Star
have
Trek,
won the
Stargate,
head-to-head.
Star Wars. That's it. But as soon as you finish, it's like they were not in my head 2 seconds ago.
Brock has redeemed himself from last episode.
When you were stuck there, I was like, I've got Toy Story ready to go. And he's like, no.
You said it, and I'm like, I hope he says they're toys.
Okay. Let us jump into the next round. This is the trivia round. Okay, so now we have the trivia round. Alrighty, so we've got a buzzer system set up here, and the person that buzzes in, as soon as you can buzz in anytime as I read the question. But if you buzz in, the question will end, and you have to answer. If you get it incorrect, the other player can take it, and I'll finish the question for them. All right, so whoever wins this gets it. Zachary, if you win, we go to a deciding question, decide who wins it all, and that's how Brock lost last episode. Oh no, you won.
I won last
You
time.
won. Hoffman lost last episode. That's right. Okay, here we go. First to buzz in. Which popular game features armies battling in a fantasy world of Azeroth?
Warcraft.
You haven't buzzed in yet. No, we've disconnected. What's happening? Well, you've got that correct. Warcraft.
My screen says I buzzed in first.
Zachary buzzed in first. That is 1 point to Zach. Okay. Let us go to the next question. We're having technical difficulties here. Question 2. What is the primary scale of miniatures used in Warhammer Fantasy battles? Brock has buzzed in first.
28 mil.
28 mil is the correct answer. Okay. Reset the buzzers. Which tabletop wargame allows players to ground God, this is horribly written. Which tabletop wargame allows players to recreate ground battles from the Star Wars universe?
Star Wars.
Zachary got that.
Star Wars Legion.
Star Wars Legion is the correct answer. That is 2-1 to Zach. Okay. Let's go on to the next question. I would have accepted Shatterpoint for that one as well. All right. What is the name of the fantasy world in which Kings of War is set? Zachary.
That was silly. I'm just going to say Mantic, but that's wrong.
That is incorrect. Brock, would you like to take a stab at this? I'll give you a hint. It is very close to what he just said. 5.
Antic?
4.
I don't know.
Mantica.
Okay.
Literally Mantic with an A at the end. Okay, so no one got that one, so it is still 2-1 to Zach. All right. What out-of-print game system uses hexagon-shaped tiles for movement and combat resolution? This is a tough one. You'd know it if you've seen it. Zach?
I think I'm wrong. I'm just Cities of War.
No. Brock, would you like to take a stab?
I keep going to BattleTech, but I know it's not BattleTech because that's still in print.
Yeah, it's still in print.
It
It was released. You could buy it in Kmart, Targets, all that kind of stuff. It was a massive game. Had Marvel IP, D&D IP. It has recently been brought back, but not as this name. It was brought back as Magic the Planeswalker.
No.
Heroescape.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it came with little plastic hexagon tiles that you built all the terrain out of. And
Yeah,
stuff.
no, Cities of War was a GW one where they released like map tiles and you could build your campaign based on that. I think it was called Cities of War.
All right, we are still at 2-1 to Zach. Okay. In Bolt Action, which historical conflict does the game focus on?
I actually don't know the game.
I do know the game.
Take a stab
I'm
at
just going to say World War II.
correct answer. World War II is the correct answer.
Almost said the Vietnam War.
Zach 3, Brock 1. Host is trailing behind here. He's got to come
Very
back.
much so.
In which game allows players to lead fantasy armies, including elves, dwarves, and orcs? Zach?
Warhammer Fantasy.
Incorrect. Would you like me to finish the question
Yeah,
here?
finish the question.
In epic battles and is based on a famous book.
Yeah, so I was going to say Lord of the Rings.
Correct answer. I knew that was going to happen. That's why I worded it like that. That is 3 to Zach, 2 to Brock. All right, next question. What is the primary setting of Warhammer Underworlds? Brock?
Warcry?
No. Zachary, would you like to take a stab at this? It was the name of one of the games that got one of the sets that got released. It was actually the name of the first set that got released, and people used to call it this. Shadespire.
Yeah, no.
It was the name of the first set, and everyone called the game Shadespire. And they're like, no, it's called Warhammer Underworlds. All right, Zachary is still 3. Brock is 2. All right, we have 3 questions left. In Necromunda, what are the lower levels of a hive city known as? Zachary. Five, 4.
Oh, I'm just going to say the sewers, but I know that's wrong. I
incorrect.
know the word, I just can't say it.
All right. Brock, now you've never played this game,
No,
so
I've
I'm going to
not.
give you a little hint here. Hive City,
I would have just got... Oh, Catacombs?
lower level of a Hive City. No. All right. Underhive.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, second last question. Zach is still leading 3 to 2. Which miniature war game focuses on battles between giant robots known... Brock?
Adeptus Titanicus?
Adeptus Titanicus is correct. The rest of the question was known as Titans in the 34th millennium. All right, so that is tied it up. Brock is 3, Zach is 3. Now, Zach, if you get this, we will do a tie-breaking question to see who wins the whole kit and caboodle. Broccoli, if you win this, I was going to call you Broccoli. Broccoli, if
Wouldn't
you
be
win
the
this,
first time.
you take the whole kit
Nor
and
would it be the
caboodle.
worst thing I've been called.
Okay. Which classic game got a reprint which sees giant monsters and robots fighting each other? Zach.
War Machine and Hordes.
Incorrect. Brock.
Giant robots and monsters fighting each other. Monster Apocalypse?
Monster Apocalypse is the correct answer.
Never heard of it.
It's a great game.
Never heard of it.
Congratulations to the host. You have won.
2 from 2.
I feel ashamed.
Yeah. Look, you had a strong lead there, but a couple of questions you didn't know, and you could have come back on that one easily. We will, just for the sake of it, we'll chuck this out there. This is the round decider. The hosts have won, but we'll see if anyone knows this. So let's just reset the buzzers there.
Oh, shit.
All right. This was going to be the deciding question. Let's see if anyone can get this. What date is Deadpool being released in Australia?
Brock. My buzzer's gone. I want to say April 25th.
Zach? No, July 25th.
Oh, I was going to say June something, but yeah, not July.
But the trailer says 26th because that's when it's getting released in America.
Sure.
But that is all we have for this episode. This was a rather long one, so if you're still listening, thank you very much for listening. It was great fun having you here, Zach. Highly appreciate you coming. You're more than welcome to come back and talk some more nerdy things with us. For Frantic Nerdcast, I'm AJ.
And I'm Brock.
And this is...
I was Zach.
Thank you very much for listening, and we'll catch you next time.